It is the private thing. No, it's okay now. So, shall I start it again? I mean, Devik, should I start it all over again? I mean, should I introduce this again or not? Okay, I'll just start it again. Sorry for the delay, guys. We had a technical glitch. Hello, everyone. I am Jayant, member ACM BitSquare student chapter, and today I'll be hosting the evening for you guys. So, explore as much as you can. You know, these are often the words we hear from our seniors, and of course, without a doubt, they are right. But the question is, how exactly do you explore a field and keep yourself motivated enough for these seemingly overwhelming topics? So don't worry, ACM Bitsco is glad to help you with this regard. We are having our Getting Started series, and today we have the last talk of this series, and we have with us Vokkant Thakkar and Akash Jha to discuss about getting started in blockchain development, as well as we'll also be talking about their experience with the field. Uh, and we'll be having a short Q&A session at the end of this talk. As a speaker introduction, we have Vokkant Thakkar, who is a software engineering intern at Microsoft and a former research intern at WoodStock Fund. He is also the former president of Blockchain Club of Bitscoa. The second speaker we have is Akash Jha. He is an Ethereum India Fellow. He, as a part of Team Vikings, has won several hackathons like HAB59, Elixar, CSIR, CEERI, AR Challenge. Amongst the others, we have Sigma Hacks 2.0 and Bay Area Hacks, among the others. So, without a further ado, we have Akash Bhaiya. You have the stage now. Thank you.
Thanks, Jen, for the introduction. So, hey everyone, I'm Akash. I'll be starting off the presentation on how to get started with blockchain. I'll be covering topics such as dApps, NFTs, and gaming. And then we'll have Vokkant, who will be taking up DeFi as the topic. So, a little bit about myself. I started around 5 months back when I got to know about Ethereum India Fellowship 2.0. So, I was participating in Out 7.0 with my teammates from Vikings, and then we got to know about the Ethereum India Fellowship application through Devfolio. That's where I filled the application. Before that, I had a little idea about what blockchain was and what can be done with it, but I was too intimidated to get into the field. At After filling the application, we had an interview round. I researched a bit about the topics I could work on, and everything went well, and I was selected. During Ethereum India Fellowship, I had 8 weeks of learning and building project with a lot of introduction to Ethereum and related technologies involved for building dApps. So through this presentation, I hope all of you can get to know a bit about Ethereum. And okay, so let me clarify a bit. So first of all, blockchain as a technology can have multiple blockchains. Ethereum is just a single most popular blockchain that you can build your decentralized applications on. There are other blockchains like Solana and other sidechains or layer 2 solutions as well. All of this is for later, so you don't need to worry about that just yet. Let's focus on Ethereum. So I learned about Ethereum a bit, and I started building decentralized applications. It's actually pretty easy. For building your decentralized applications, you need to make smart contracts. You need to write smart contracts which are written in the programming language known as Solidity. There are other languages like Rust, Viper, and others, even including some commonly known languages such as C Sharp. But for Ethereum smart contracts, we commonly use Solidity. So I was introduced to Solidity, and the fun part is when learning Ethereum or blockchain, there are so many resources you can choose from, and some are really fun. Like the next one I'll talk about, Crypto Zombies. Crypto Zombies is an interactive tutorial for Solidity where you create your own NFT and other applications through an interactive tutorial. You can check out the link given. It will take you from basics to all the advanced concepts you'll require to create your own smart contracts that you can then deploy on chain. Next, I needed to use a tool to compile and deploy my smart contracts. Now there are multiple tools available for that. Stuff like Hardhat and Truffle are more command line based, but I was a beginner, right? As most of you probably are right now. So the best tool I found at that point was Remix IDE. Remix IDE is an online IDE where you need to install absolutely nothing. You can just go to remix.ethereum.org and you can start working from there. It allows you to compile, test, deploy Solidity code all through GUI. So you'll have buttons to compile, deploy, and test your smart contract. It's all easy and really easy to navigate. You also get JavaScript VM with Remix IDE, meaning you don't need to worry about the gas cost of deploying your smart contracts when you're just testing it out. You can do it on a VM and then check for different issues and errors. Now that you're done with deploying your smart contracts, we move to the next part. Frontend. For decentralized applications, you don't really have a backend. Most of the backend application of your code, and I say the backend in quotes, is done through smart contracts. Now, the problem with backend is it's hidden, right? So there is no trustlessness involved. So the practice of having a backend in your dApps is highly frowned upon by the community. You technically can have a backend, but it's a bad practice. You want your applications to be trustless, meaning no third-party manipulation to the activity being going on in your application, and completely decentralized, meaning you can't just stop it or stop people from interacting to it using a third-party platform, right? Which you can in a Web 2 application like your simple websites with regular backends. Now, all your smart contract code is on-chain, and all your front-end code is on the browser. There is no middle party involved. So now the next question is, how do you connect your smart contracts to your front end? There are several libraries that allow you to do exactly this. So some popular libraries are web3.js or web3.py. Web3.js for JavaScript. So if you're creating a React app, you can use web3.js, or if you're using Python, you can use web3.py. Again, you can connect to a wallet, a Web3 wallet, and then connect to your smart contract through that using these libraries. Now on your front end, you're able to call any function that you have defined on the smart contract. So simply saying any code that is on your smart contract can now be interacted through your front end. Now, on blockchain, all the transactions have a basic cost, especially for Ethereum. And sometimes these are really expensive. Now, these costs are related to the size of the data you're storing. So if you try to store an image, that is going to be really expensive. But as you may know about NFTs usually have artworks involved. So where are these images being stored? Clearly not on blockchain. We have IPFS for that. IPFS is a tool for decentralized data storage. Larger data that can't be stored on-chain and can be expensive is stored through IPFS. IPFS basically chunks your data. So think of it as breaking down your data and then giving it an address, a hash that is always unique, and then distributing it to all the nodes on the network. All these nodes then hold on to your data. And then whenever someone requests that data, all these hashes are retrieved. Now these hashes also point to the next address where chunk may be. And finally, all that broken down data is connected back and retrieved to the user. Now, there is an issue for persistence. This storage can't absolutely be free, right? Otherwise, we would all be using IPFS instead of Web2 storage solutions. That is the case. For storage on IPFS, it's not really persistent unless someone pins the file. Now, what pinning is someone needs to say, yes, I need this file and I'm going to keep a reference to it. If that reference is kept, then that file lives on IPFS. So whoever then requests the file next will keep a cached copy of that file. And that is how popular files remain on IPFS. But obviously, if you're creating an application, you can't always be sure that's going to be popular or someone is going to keep a cached copy of your application. For that, there are pinning tools. You don't need to worry about them just yet, but know that the solution is available. Again, you can check out the link proto.school for complete tutorial on IPFS. Next, let's talk about the applications. So before starting with blockchain, I was augmented reality and game developer. So when I got into blockchain, I was personally interested in the gaming aspect of blockchain. But along with that, DeFi and NFTs are other popular use cases. DeFi or decentralized finance basically decentralize the Web2 finance that you know as of now, and Vokkant will be taking that further. NFTs or non-fungible tokens are a really cool topic. So you may have heard of Ethereum, Matic, Bitcoin, right? All of those are fungible tokens, meaning one Ethereum is always going to be the same as other Ethereum. One Ethereum equals one Ethereum. But that's not the same for non-fungible tokens, NFTs. One NFT need not have the same value as another NFT. And both of them are going to be unique, meaning they can't replace each other. So let's get a bit more into NFTs. With NFTs, there's always going to be a proof of authenticity. What this means is there's always going to be a defined owner for that NFT. So, say you have a piece of art. Now that piece of art can have a JPG image attached to it, JPG file attached to it, and another person can own the same art or a different copy of it, right? What happens here is when you mint that into an NFT, and creation of NFT is called minting the NFT. So when you mint an NFT, you define an owner to it, and that copy is always going to have that particular owner and a particular hash. So if you have minted an NFT as an artist, then that NFT simplified, saying in a simple way, is going to have a different is going to have a particular hash, a unique hash attached to it, and it's always going to be unique. So anyone who buys it from you is going to get the authentic NFT, and any attempt to duplicate it is going to result in a different hash, meaning anyone can find out that it's not the same thing as what you sold. Proof of authenticity is a great concept, and results in in the value for NFTs. Having said that, NFTs hold absolutely no intrinsic value. So say something like Bitcoin or Ethereum, if there is no direct market for it, you're still going to be able to sell those and have a particular value attached to it. But for NFTs, if you have an artwork that you bought for say 2 ETH, there is absolutely no guarantee that it's going to have the same value tomorrow. It absolutely depends on who wants to buy it and what price they're willing to pay. Therefore, NFTs have no intrinsic value. Other really cool thing NFTs do is they bring scarcity. So this is a cool application for games as well, wherein if you have a character asset, you can define the limitation to the quantity of those assets. Now, if anyone buys that, there is going to be restriction on how many sales can be made from that one particular asset. So if you have a unique item in the game, there can only ever be one owner of that item. And anyone who attempts to duplicate that will have a fake item and no clear authenticity. There's another cool website, nftschool.dev, where they have tutorials and open sourced education or learning based blogs and articles for NFTs and all the storage related stuff for NFTs. Because for NFTs, you need a storage for all the images and stuff. So IPFS is used and they go into all that stuff. Now let's talk about gaming. Now, blockchain games benefit from verifiability. Any data that you put on chain is always going to be verifiable. Meaning, if you make a transaction and everything on chain goes through a transaction, right? So if you make a transaction, another person can check that transaction and verify, yes, this went through and this happened at this point in time, right? So the scope of actually cheating or manipulating data is really lowered through that. Monetization. So say prediction based games or say fantasy games, fantasy teams and stuff. Those games usually have a third party involved, which usually takes a cut of any profit you make through those games. Now blockchain takes out the third party involved and keeps everything automated and trustless. So there is absolutely no third party involved, which is going to take away your profits, and you're going to get 100% of that minus whatever the gas costs are. Next, there is scarcity. So you can define a limited edition item. Through Web 2, if you define something limited, it's up to your whim when you want to increase that limit. But with blockchain, if you limit the amount of something, unless it has been coded previously, otherwise, it's always going to be limited. And the final part is open database system. So any data on blockchain is open source, public, and for everyone to view. So if you create a smart contract that keeps player assets, say swords and shields and stuff like that, and I'm a developer, I'm using those NFTs to create my game. But there can be another developer who can use the same exact NFTs for that from that database for their own game, and it's a really cool concept. And if several developers want to collaborate on it, they can even make it so that the game data is being transferred between multiple games, and they can create an absolute ecosystem out of it. And that's how powerful the application of blockchain is for gaming. There is no corporate wall behind the data being used. So everyone is absolutely open to use their creativity to use the data on chain. Next, competitions and bounties. So at this point, you're probably curious about what you can do with all this information and what are the benefits of getting into blockchain. Blockchain is such a booming industry that at this point, you can do absolutely anything related to blockchain and be able to earn from it. What I mean is, on Gitcoin, there are several bounties available. So even if you're an artist, a memer, a gamer, a front-end developer, or someone absolutely unrelated to blockchain, you're still able to get bounties that are related to blockchain. So say something like someone creates a bounty, some company creates a bounty, and this happens regularly for you to post a meme on Twitter or for you to create a meme for their product. That's easy and requires no technical knowledge and just some general knowledge about blockchain and their product. And it's well paid, it's really easy to do, and everyone has access to it. Then there are competitions, hackathons. Blockchain hackathons are absolutely cool. So right now they're obviously not in person, but even online there are a lot of workshops, a lot of games involved. And recently I was part of ETH Odyssey, a hackathon by Devfolio, where they had this gather down setup, and they were doing all sorts of cool stuff there. So it's really cool. The vibe is really good, and you can enjoy yourself as well as learn something new and possibly earn some crypto out of it. Now, the thing with bounties here is, I have participated. I first participated in Etherpunk during my fellowship at EIF, Ethereum India Fellowship, and I won that bounty in Polygon category. I won Polygon bounty for NFTs and gaming. I'll show you the applications that I've built, but the basic premise is to use the sponsored product, and it's really easy to use. Use the sponsored product, build some cool application out of it, and that's it. And the learning involved is really great and will really help you out with other stuff. Not just that, we even participated in 0x Hack, where we were given the task to create tutorials. As easy as that. No application involved, just tutorials for particular topics, and we won that. And we got the bounties paid out for that. So these are the cool things you can do from bounties and competitions. All these competitions are really high stake, really high profile, and you're going to have fun doing it. Each Global has regular hackathons. Devfolio organizes a lot of hackathons. And on Gitcoin, you can find all sorts of crypto related bounties, crypto and blockchain related bounties. So let's talk a bit about my work and what I've done with my knowledge till now. So, during my stay at EIF, I participated in Etherpunk, an Ethereum-based hackathon. There, I made an NFT-based AR trading card game, Demon or Decentralized Monster Game. The idea was to use NFTs, the scarcity of NFTs, and the true ownership that NFTs bring. What I mean by true ownership is that you are always the owner of your digital asset and no one can take it away from you without your consent, right? So what does that resonate to? Trading card games for me. And with my work with augmented reality, I could convert that into a multiplayer AR game. So now you can have a real world Yu-Gi-Oh or Duel Masters and play with your friends with that. And all the while, you have the true ownership, so you can even sell away your cards if that pleases you. Next, I worked on another game, and then we had NFT-based authentication service. So NFT for me brings scarcity, and things that needs digital scarcity can be vast, right? So even you may want your website to be invitation only, but then you don't want to give out the invitations. You just want to sell it. NFTs can do that, right? You have a limited number of digital authentication tokens or NFTs that can then be sold on different marketplaces, which people are able to buy and sell on their own accord. You can't take it away. And that gives them access to your website or your application. And the base model for that was my work. Next, recently, I participated in Harmony One Love Hackathon, where my project, Geospatial NFT Marketplace or Geospatial, won the bounty for the same category. I'll show you the screenshots for two of those. So on the left, we have decentralized monsters, Demon. Each of these monsters are an NFT on Polygon chain. And Polygon is an EVM compatible chain. You can Google it. EVM compatible chain work pretty much the same way on the developer side as Ethereum chain. So you can create the same smart contract and deploy on Polygon as you would on Ethereum. So there's not much learning curve there. So I created NFTs, and then users were able to buy those NFTs and fight out their monsters in real world with Demon. And on the right hand side, we have Geospatial, where we made it such that users were able to buy real world locations on blockchain as NFTs. So you have different locations given as NFTs, and then users can bid on it and buy it and later be able to sell it. There is a huge scope on how you can gamify the entire process and how you can further work on it. But the best part is the technology is really cool and you're only limited by your creativity. There have been many protocols and products related to Ethereum and blockchain in general that you can use to build your decentralized applications. Obviously, some things, uh, tools like Chainlink VRF, which provide you verifiably random numbers. And then we have Aave for flash loans and all the other protocols and tools that you can use to create your applications. You can make absolutely anything with it. And the best part is, whatever you make here is going to sustain for as long as the chain exists. So even if you create an application today and forget about it for 50 years, it's still going to exist right there without you paying anything for it and without you worrying. Uh, that would be all from my side. Obviously, you can contact me. So this is my team contact information. This is my startup Vikings Tech. You can contact me and my teammates on teamvikingstech@gmail.com. Twitter is Vikings__tech, and YouTube is Vikings Tech Blogs. We all the tutorials and stuff that we did for bounties can be found here, so you can check that out. And you can obviously ask us stuff there as well as in the Q&A afterwards. So with that, I think I'll pass on to Vokkant.
Yep, cool, cool. Sounds good.
Okay, I'll stop the presentation. You can go ahead.
Right, is it visible?
Yeah, the presentation is visible.
Okay, cool, cool. So I'll briefly tell you guys about myself really quickly. So hey everybody, thank you for joining in. I'm Vokkant. I started blockchain development after my during my PS basically. That's where I was first introduced to it. I had a really nice mentor who basically told me that okay, so we're going to give you an option between two projects, which is blockchain and machine learning, and you can pick what you want. And back then, I mean, I hadn't even started coding. I had no clue how anything worked. And I just thought, blockchain seems slightly more unique, so I'll pick that direction. So I worked on my first project then, and I think that was honestly a lot of fun. My mentor was really, really helpful. He would, take everything up. He would, answer my stupidest questions. I had never even written code before, other than the basic CS course that all of us do in our first year. So that was the only background I had, and that's how I started. And it was honestly a lot of fun. So I got very interested in the space after that, and I wanted to stick around. So I kept taking part in hackathons, and I think that's something that people who universally work in blockchain sort of agree with. Even Akash said this, even I'll say this, that hackathons are a lot of fun. And you get to work on really good problem statements. And you can also make some money on the side, which is also really, really nice. So for me, after that, I took part in the Microsoft hackathon, which is how I ended up getting my internship this year. But I mean, that comes later. And I basically kept taking part in different things and other events like at Global and so on. And I think from there, basically, you start attending those events, you realize that how massive the space is and basically what all is going on in the ecosystem. And the ecosystem is huge. Like you can spend, your entire life trying to learn what is going on, and you still feel like you haven't done enough. So that's how I started out. I was just very interested in the space. And I also took part in the Ethereum India Fellowship, like Akash did, that I did in my third year. And after that, I took up an internship at a place where I worked on a smart contract for a shipping supply chain application. And for the last 7, 8 months, I've been working at this investment fund called WoodStock, which is basically a venture capital fund, and they invest money into blockchain startups. So I have to understand the entire blockchain space, look at it look at it from a bird's eye view, try to figure out what are the gaps that exist in the ecosystem, and try to find the right projects that we can fund and create a good ecosystem and also create good returns for our investors. So that's my background till now. And I think I'll just continue where Akash left off. So Akash focused heavily on NFT and gaming. And I think for me, I think the cooler parts of blockchain are in decentralized finance and in Web3 architecture. So the current financial system that exists, it has been around for over 30 to I mean, it's obviously 1,000 years old, but the recent system that we have seen, with the banks and how they control everything, and with the 2008 financial crisis, it became more and more evident that there's too much power in these certain individuals, which should not exist, right? So finance in general was, it was very inaccessible. They were very financial services in general are very exclusionary. They're based on where you live, how much money you have, and that really should not be a thing. Anybody who has extra money should be allowed to invest his money into different products, and it should not be dictated by a bank how those things work. Secondly, the markets themselves are very inefficient. There's a lot of human interaction. There's a lot of intermediaries in the whole process. So it's costly in terms of money, and that whole process is not great for somebody to sit through. And then the last thing is that financial services are very opaque. You can there are obviously cases where banks are over leveraged and things aren't great in the long term. So, what is necessary for this to change is a decentralized financial system, right? Where you don't rely on a big block like a bank, And instead, the financial system is sort of spread around in between people, and it's all open and transparent. So that's what blockchain gives to us, right? Blockchain is basically to like, if you're looking at smart contract platforms, blockchain is basically programmable money. So what you can do with that money is you can make it accessible to everyone, because now people can make transactions simply using their phone. They don't have to go through a bank. If I want to send money to person B, I can just use the Ethereum network, and I don't really need to go to a bank or pay my fees to a certain individual who's then in charge of my money, right? They're very efficient because the way that they are structured, and because it is the system in itself is designed to eliminate those intermediaries. So it is very efficient. Your money goes to the other person directly. There's a lot of good like checks and balances that are in place, and it's transparent, right? Because a blockchain is always publicly auditable. All the things that you do on a blockchain are always visible. So that is a very good favor in like a good point in favor of DeFi. So so I'll just briefly talk about what exists in the DeFi stack, and and like I know that these things might seem a little bit complicated at first, but it's to give you guys a general idea about where and what you can do in this field, about where you can contribute. Right. So, I mean, I think Akash did a great job of covering how, like what are the applications for NFTs that exist, and what blockchain games look like, and what the current system is. So, similarly, because the DeFi section is a little bit more complicated, there's a lot more, I feel like there's a lot more intricacies to it. But on a basic level, it just boils down to how, like, a traditional like a traditional financial product can be replaced on the blockchain, right? So there's a lot of like those kinds of projects that exist, and they do really well because they're more efficient in general, and they also are trustless, so anybody can come in, anybody can make those transactions. So again, a very common example that all of us know about is borrowing and lending, right? So it's something very basic, it's something that every bank does, but now you can do borrowing and lending on the blockchain itself. So you're not tied to a bank. You don't need to sit through hours of and like wait for approval. You can just go to a lending borrowing protocol on the Ethereum network. You can say, okay, this is what I want, and like based on that, you can like use that money to basically create more money for yourself in a certain way, right? So that's what borrowing and lending is all about. Then you have decentralized exchanges. So again, instead of going to a traditional exchange, and I think this became very evident with the whole Robinhood saga that happened a couple months ago, right? Where everybody wanted to trade GameStop, but because Melvin Capital had some control over Robinhood, people were not able to trade on Robinhood, right? They actively stopped all the GameStop trading on Robinhood. So that's a typical case where a centralized party comes in and they interfere with the entire system, which is why decentralized exchanges are better. You don't have somebody who can come in and say, okay, you know what, you won't be allowed to trade this. That's not how decentralized finance works, right? It's trustless. You can come in anytime, you can trade anything you want, and that's what is good about the system. So again, and then all of these, like there's derivatives and there's synthetics, and all of these financial products have already been created on the blockchain. Insurance is still a relatively more growing field on the blockchain, but again, it's something very, very interesting. So how these work is that all of these are basically smart contracts that are programmed onto the blockchain, and they rely on a lot of things like what I've mentioned here, right? So you could theoretically write a smart contract that takes in information from an oracle. So an oracle is something that basically provides data to a smart contract. And you can take data from an oracle that is something like, okay, if a stock price dips by this much, I want you to trade this in my account. Right. And that could just simply be a smart contract. The oracle will send in that data, the smart contract analyzes that data, and all of this is happening automatically. People don't need to, like, once that smart contract has been programmed, all of this will be taken care of automatically, and all of this is out in the open, so people will see how that particular smart contract behaves, and there won't be any surprises. There won't be any subprime lending and things like that, which often lead to not so great consequences. So again, all of these things are a bit complicated, but generally, whatever you see in the traditional financial world is being replicated on the blockchain to make it trustless, to make it more open for people. and to make it efficient. So, and obviously, there are very blockchain specific products that exist out there that are very interesting, staking being one. And there's a lot of them. But again, for that, you need to deep dive into the technical stack a bit more. And I think that would be out of scope for this particular call. So yeah, so we can see all the open finance systems that exist on Ethereum, right? So you have credit and lending, and then you have stable coins because like volatility is something that still exists in the crypto market. So how do you combat that? You peg a coin to a certain value. It can be to the dollar. It can be there's algorithmic stable coins. So there's all sorts of like innovation going on in the field, and you can like be a part of any of these. So custodial services again is very important. If you have a wallet that you need to interact with the blockchain, that is where that comes in. And prediction markets are again very, very important to sort of like maintain a certain equilibrium in a certain sense. So yeah, so that basically covers, I think, all of DeFi. And I like DeFi is sort of the next step, right? So I think like an analogy that is given very often is that the early days of the internet, which is when like earlier what happened was that communication used to happen through very traditional channels, and they used to take too long. They used to, it used to be very hard to set it up. It used to be very expensive. Now, with the internet, what you have is a decentralized way of sharing information. The internet is just a set of computers that are connected to each other, right? Spread all over the world. So, what blockchain does is it enables a similar advancement, but in the field of finance. So, now instead of money being in a central authority, which is like a bank, it sort of exists everywhere and nowhere at the same time through a blockchain. And you can rely on it to have certain features, which we have already discussed in the past. So, which is why I think I'm very excited about DeFi. And now Web3 is the core stack that is evolving along with blockchain. So it is what is being used in that particular field. So it does not it does not just include financial applications, but it also includes like solutions to data problems. So right now we just discussed an Oracle, right? So an Oracle would come under like Web3 infrastructure. Then now there are ways that you can interact with cloud services that are decentralized. So you don't need to rely on Amazon Web Services or something like that. So Amazon, for example, recently had some problem with crypto mining on their accounts for like apparently not a very logical reason, and they kept banning accounts. But now, if you have a cloud service that is decentralized, you can't really ban somebody from using that protocol, right? And they're getting better service. I mean, not in the current state, but in the future, when that technological stack has evolved enough, they will be getting better service for a much lesser price. And IPFS is something that Akash mentioned. I think IPFS also comes under the cloud services slash storage part of Web3. And then there's obviously privacy and security. So I think all of us are familiar with VPNs. And VPNs are something, that are very like, so to get a good VPN, you have to pay for it. And even if you do pay for it, you're very much reliant on a particular company. So NordVPN, for example, it's a company that I think all of us should be like would be familiar with. But they had a hack in 2018, and that's when everybody realized that all the information that that you were accessing through that VPN, they were logging all along, and then that information got leaked. So decentralized VPNs are a combat to that, where you have multiple computers that sort of help you hide your connection, and at the same time, because that technology is open source, that they're not logging any unnecessary data. Somebody can audit it, somebody can ensure that nothing wrong is going on. And obviously there's privacy transactions, there's entire blockchains that exist out there which deal just with privacy. So there's a lot of other applications to the whole Web3 stack as well. So there's multiple protocols and platforms like we have discussed already. A lot of these are also like Uniswap and Market Protocol. All of these are DeFi applications. But then there's some here which are which are meant to like basically provide more functionality to the given network, right? And then there's scaling solutions. So in the current state that Ethereum is in, it is extremely slow and not scalable. So how do you increase its performance? So there are these things called layer 2 architectures, which basically do a certain amount of computation not on the blockchain and use the blockchain for final verification and post their final proofs on it. So thereby they maintain the integrity of the data while increasing the overall capacity of the blockchain. And then there's a lot of frameworks that people use. So Truffle obviously is one of them. Open Zeppelin is a very famous smart contract platform in some way. I think that's the wrong way to describe it. But I'll also like to, at the end of this, maybe do a quick demo with Open Zeppelin and show you guys how easy it is to, so everybody talks about, creating their own cryptocurrency. And I think I would like to just show you guys how easy it is. I mean, you can literally do it in like 5 minutes using an Open Zeppelin smart contract. And then on the infrastructure side, we've already discussed MetaMask. It's a wallet. If I show you guys the smart contract demo, then I think we'll get to MetaMask as well. So that would cover it. We've already discussed IPFS in the storage side. So yep. So so I think the whole purpose of this is to just tell you that, there's a lot of things that are happening in the ecosystem, right? And you can contribute to any part of it that you want. So to get started, I think the first resource that I would like to refer you guys to is the Solidity documentation itself, because Ethereum is currently, where all the where most of the development activity is happening. And you'll find the most help and the most amount of resources for Solidity itself, which is why I recommend you start there. And once you are comfortable with Solidity, once you are comfortable with the idea of a blockchain, once you're comfortable with smart contract programming, what you can do is you can expand into other blockchains. So Solana is a blockchain that has become really famous recently. And, so they actually have a Rust smart contract programming language. Like they don't use Solidity. So, you might have to pick up those things. But for somebody who's just starting out, I think Solidity is a great place because you have the amount of resources that are necessary. And, you can read the documentation of it. It is well, like the whole platform has been battle tested very well. So you won't run into any irregularities, so to say. Then Web3 again, Akash, I think discussed. So we can sort of skip that part. Eat the Blocks is a really good YouTube channel that I think if you're looking to get into smart contract development and blockchain development in general, you should subscribe to it. They basically, he has like advice from like the whole range of like how to start smart contract programming to how you can get into more complex smart contracts and so on. And Consensus is the software engineering company that makes Ethereum. Basically, it's the software company that has been licensed to create Ethereum, and they have a lot of good documentation out there. You can, once you are more familiar with the basics, so if you want to understand, how real world smart contracts work, and if you get an internship somewhere and you want to learn how to, because so if you go for a job in the blockchain space, what generally will happen is that you'll face these things called upgradable smart contracts. So if you want to understand and learn how upgradable smart contracts work, and in there also there's many different ways you can go about it. So there's different standards, so to say of. So so that is when Consensus comes in. It really helps you deep dive into the Ethereum ecosystem. It helps you pick which design choices are good for you. But that is a little bit later once you are done with the basics. And Open Zeppelin, again, you'll use it extensively for smart contracts. I'll show you guys Open Zeppelin really quickly right now too. So yeah, and I think a couple of general things that I would like to point out here that I think these are mistakes that I have made that I would like not anybody else to repeat is that I think when all of us start out with anything, right, our first general step is to start out with a tutorial, right? And we take a video tutorial where they're building something and you follow along to that tutorial. Now, that's a great way to learn. I think for the first step, it's great. But what happens is after, if you don't program yourself to think, think how to program, I guess that's the correct way to put it. But if you don't write that code yourself, you don't really learn anything in that whole process. So I think it's a good, so to understand and to make yourself familiar with the ecosystem, it's okay to pick up a couple of tutorials that are, follow along and code along to this and see how it's working and what basic things are. But I think after that, you just need to step away from it. You need to be like, okay, I'm picking up a personal project. Take any project you're interested in, right? As we discussed, there's a huge stack. There's a huge range of projects you can choose from. You can create something new. You can try to build on something that is already existing out there. Most of the work that happens in blockchain is open source. So finding open source projects is very easy. Gitcoin, as Akash discussed, is a great platform. You can get a good amount of money just by, like going through Gitcoin grants and helping other people solve their problems while also improving your software development skills. So I think that, so after you're done with the first couple of tutorials, just be sure to, understand and like understand the whole process, and not just be that person who can like follow along to your tutorial or like just copy code from Stack Overflow, because that's not great for you in the long term. And I think this is something that I have struggled with and I'm still struggling with, in fact. So I think that is one general piece of advice. The second one I think would be that the whole ecosystem is really wide. Don't get too like demotivated. There's a lot to learn. It'll take you a couple of years, so just stick at it. There's Obviously there's great things that can happen for you. So, and I think like those are things that I'll cover a little bit later. First, I'll just quickly run you guys through a couple of project ideas that you can take up if you're starting out. So the first one obviously is blockchain voting. So this is something that all of us are like very familiar with. It's something that is like one of the most discussed use cases of a blockchain. So you can try to write a smart contract that takes in users' votes and try to build a front end around it, see how that would look. And it's a very basic use case, but I think it's a great stepping stone for getting into how you're doing this. You'll find tutorials for blockchain voting too. It's a very sort of common sort of a project, basically. Then another thing that exists out there is basically, you create a smart contract wallet of some sort, which basically takes automated actions for you. So that could be one idea. Another idea could be you could just build a wallet that gives you like some sort of information that, and this would not be using a smart contract. You would have to use some sort of APIs that fetch information from the blockchain, but you could build some sort of a wallet around that. Bulk Sender is an application that already exists, which basically what it does is if I want to send tokens to multiple people, so if I want to send tokens to say 4 different people, I can either, make 4 different transactions, or I can feed it into the Bulk Sender app and it will be automatically get sent to 4 different people. So that is something that is really cool. Then a little bit on the advanced side, we have hash time locked smart contracts. So what they do is basically if you want to exchange a certain asset across blockchains, right? So if I'm on Ethereum and there's somebody else on Binance Smart Chain, how do I send a particular amount of money to that other person, right? Or how do I send that money to somebody in a trustless manner where both of us are not defrauded in any way, and we can still send the money to each other. So hash time lock smart contracts are a application of that. That is, I think, a very good project to start on, because you understand multiple blockchains, you understand the core details of how like the Solidity language itself works, which is, I think, really cool. And then finally, there's a dead man switch, which basically means that, so a common problem with blockchain, for example, that we all know about is that once you like, if um if somebody does not share their password with you, if you don't have somebody's password and they're in your family and they pass away for some reason, then there's no way to transfer those assets from that person to you, right? Because the password is what is essential to get into that particular person's wallet. So what Deadman Switch will do is it will basically, like, if a certain amount of time has passed and if a still alive function has not been clicked, then what can be done is, another person can come in and claim the amount of money that exists in that wallet. So that sort of a functionality can also, really help you understand how Solidity works in depth. So for the overall picture, I think that's the cool thing about blockchain, right? It's very inclusive. You can work on front end development. There's back end development. So by back end development, I don't mean software develop. I don't mean smart contract development. Smart contract development is something we've spoken about extensively on this call. But even in the back end, because the blockchain itself, you need to query information from it. There's continuously, like, if you want to fetch transaction data live, that would require some level of back end programming. And I mean, there's a lot of different, applications of backend development that already exist out there. So that is also something you can work on. Then, and, security and audits are extremely lucrative. They are like, so there's only a very few security and audit firms right now in blockchain. And if you want to get your project audited, people sometimes have to wait like 8 to 10 months to get their particular like smart contract audited. And like they pay really well. I mean, I think the job is hard because understanding like for this you really need to deep dive into the protocol, but it's extremely lucrative, and you really gain an understanding of what you're working on. And then obviously there's data science positions, because I mean there's a lot of data around the blockchain itself. You can like there's hours and hours of data that you can go through. There's so many metrics you have to track. So that is again something that you can work on. And then there's the research aspect of things. So Ethereum Foundation is one of the biggest like places that all of us know about, and they're like they constantly hire researchers in different fields. So it does not even have to be limited to computer science, because that is not what blockchain is limited to, right? There's mathematicians there. There's also like economists there, because they also have to design good token models for their project. So there's a lot of work that goes into blockchain. And I think even like limiting it to development is a bit too much. Like I think this is still a very narrow picture of the sort of scope of blockchain. And this is just focused on hardcore like development and sort of related to development, but there's so many other roles you can take up. And I think another thing that I particularly really like about blockchain is the fact that it's very inclusive. So, I, for example, am a chemical engineer, and like, so for me to, be able to do well in a field, it speaks to, how inclusive it is, right? Because I was able to, like pick development up myself and then find a job for myself in this field. And I think that is like an experience that you'll find across like the entire blockchain industry. People are very agnostic to degrees. So I don't know if you guys know about Uniswap, but Uniswap is one of the largest like decentralized exchanges out there. It does more volume in terms of like it does more trading volume, even more than like Binance and Coinbase on some days. On in fact most days, I think actually. So the founder of Uniswap is actually a mechanical engineer. He was very interested in Ethereum, and he thought Uniswap would be a cool idea to work on. So he taught himself how to, he taught himself Solidity, and now he's one of the most like recognizable people in the blockchain industry itself. So I think that is what is really cool. It's a very inclusive space. You can work on any part of development that you want to. And finally, I would just quickly like to talk about how people from Bits are working in blockchain. And I think two examples that that are our immediate seniors who are also from Bitscoa are two people who are working at the Ethereum Foundation, in fact, and they're working there as researchers. And so I think one of them, I don't know if you know these people, but one of them is this guy called Aditya, and he basically did his thesis at the University of Southern California, and there his prof was working with blockchain, so that's how he got introduced to it. And I mean he had been working on blockchain while he was in India, but he worked with his prof over there on a blockchain research related topic. And after that he got into the Ethereum Foundation, and he's working now very closely with Vitalik. So Vitalik is like the, I think, the god of blockchain. He's the one who created Ethereum, and he's the one who sort of like he's the like the considered the genius of the blockchain industry in general. So Aditya is a great example. Then another senior we have is Rahul. Rahul has a background in math, and I think I spoke to Rahul a few days ago, and I think he was also, so he didn't know about blockchain at all. His work was entirely around math, but there was an application of, so there's this thing called privacy preserving computation, and unfortunately we don't have the time to like sort of deep dive into it, but that is something that he was working on. And so he was working with the prof on it, and that prof was contracted by the Ethereum Foundation. So then he ended up applying there, and he is now working out of India, and he's working in a US based firm. So, and again, so he's making a lot of money as well. And I think something that people generally like say about research is that, oh, you won't get paid well in the field, but blockchain is extremely well funded. So, generally, if you're looking for money, it is a very lucrative space. It is very satisfying. You get to work with really, really smart people. So I think my general message here is that, just take up blockchain. I hope we have given you a brief idea as to how to get into it. and you can take up all of the resources that you want. You can start along with any tutorials that you find interesting, work on in any applications that you find interesting, and the industry is always looking for great people to work, so you won't have a problem when you get to that part of things. So yeah, I think for now I would just say start, and yeah, it's going to be great. All the best, and if there's any questions, please let us know.
Yeah, we have a lot of questions. Okay, I'll proceed with the questions now. And by the way, this was a really insightful talk. I'm sure our viewers and they got a chance to learn a lot. Yeah, so the first basic question that we have is, I mean, how much time does learning Solidity take?
Okay, so I think me and Vokkant are both able to take that one. So I think we can both give our timelines. So personally, for me, it took me around 1 month to get the basics in, and then actually I'm still just learning, man. Like everyone who's into blockchain will tell you that it's a continuous learning process. You can get the basics in where you're able to make your own smart contracts and everything around it in about 1 to 1.5 months. And then, and also depends a bit on your learning pace, but 1 to 1.5 months should be the average. And anything advanced or anything afterwards is just a continuous learning process. Vukant, do you want to share your own timeline?
Yeah, so for me, I think so. The thing is, actually, the first project I worked on was on Hyperledger. So my first smart contract that I wrote was actually in Golang and not Solidity. Sorry. So for me, I think after that, when I took up my second hackathon, that's when I really got into Solidity. And for me, I think I took my time with it. Like, I think because college was going on, and I was primarily working for the hackathon and not to learn the language in itself. So I took like a good 2 to 3 months to get familiar with it, and and like also Solidity as a language, it keeps changing like every 3 to 4 months. So honestly, because I haven't written like for the last few months, I've been busy with Microsoft. I don't even know what the updated Solidity looks like. So I mean, I think I'll have to go back and study now if I have to write a smart contract. So I think it's constantly evolving, and you keep learning as you go along. Like it's not like you can't put a hard and fast timeline to it. But I think after a couple of like good projects, you're very familiar with it to the point where you can be like, okay, I can create my own application using this now.
Yeah, that was a nice answer. The second question we have is, what amount of knowledge about core functioning of blockchains is necessary to get started with blockchain development?
Okay, so I'll take that one up. So basically, there are two entirely different fields, right? There is blockchain development where you're creating the literal blockchain, right? The architectural side, and then there is building apps on top of blockchain. And for most part, those two are entirely different. You don't need to be a master of cryptography or know the inner workings to create an app. Kind of the same way, you don't need to know how internally Android works to create an Android application, or how the binary for a game works to create a game, right? It's kind of the same logic there. You don't need to know a lot. Having some knowledge is always helpful for like implementing stuff and optimizing for different applications and stuff. But you don't need to know a lot to get started at the very least.
The next question is an interesting question. A lot of people contemplate that we can in future remove dependency on tech giants like Facebook and have their decentralized alternatives. What is the technical feasibility of these claims? And if these are true, I mean, how far we are from this future?
Vukant, you want to take that up?
Yeah. So I think the time part of it is a bit like I can't answer that because I think the blockchain field moves very fast. Like, so I mean, after having worked in blockchain for the last 7 8 years, I mean 7 8 months, sorry, and honestly, it feels like 7 8 years because things just happen really fast, right? So I don't want to commit to a time frame because I'm pretty sure I'll be wrong over there. But that being said, yeah, we are definitely seeing a very strong, and this is because the tech stack itself is evolving, right? Ethereum existed like 5 years ago. It came out in 2015. Before that, there was no Ethereum. So, given that it has just taken 5 years for these things to happen, I'm very sure that, we can take over, and it's necessary to, not rely on a tech giant like Facebook because of what they do. So, I think that future in itself will happen. I don't want to commit to a time frame, but what I can say is that we have been getting like smaller and smaller indications of it, right? And I'll again talk about Uniswap. So Uniswap is a decentralized exchange, right? Now, if a decentralized exchange can do much better than a centralized exchange in terms of, so again, Uniswap has its own problem. Gas fees are really high right now in general. And I think trading on a centralized exchange is much cheaper. But there are times when, there was extreme load right now, especially right now in the like in the bull market. And what happened was that Uniswap was able to cope with all of that load because it was decentralized. A lot of exchanges like Binance and like Coinbase would often go down because they weren't able to handle this level of load. And I think that is true testament to blockchain technology, that if you can create a financial application that can manage all of this money, then you have to just keep building on top of it. And if you keep building on top of it the right way, eventually you'll get to a point where you can have that, like, decentralized future you sort of hope to see.
Yeah, okay. As a personal add-on, I wanted to ask, I mean, at this moment, what exactly is the difference in performance between decentralized applications and, applications that have centralized architecture, the ones which are hosted on big giants like AWS, Google Cloud platforms, etc. I mean, I wanted to ask this.
Yeah. So the thing with blockchains is that, so I mean, I think comparing it to AWS and Google Cloud is a little bit. I mean, it's not right because a blockchain, if you look at it more traditionally, it's a database of sorts, right? It's a decentralized database, and it is currently slow. So I mean, if you look at it the way that Ethereum is right now, Ethereum processes 15 transactions every second, but a payment provider like Visa, for example, Visa can provide up to, I think it's like
It's like
50, 60,000.
20,000
I don't know
something.
the exact.
Yeah, I think
Okay,
it
yeah,
was
so
like
20,000, right?
22,000 something.
Yep, exactly. So that is the current problem that exists. But now what people are doing is they're implementing sharding. So now there's a project called Elrond, which is a layer one I'm very excited about, and they have implemented sharding, and now they are hitting 260,000 transactions per second on their testnet, which is also significantly faster than Visa. So I think that is where. So it's a growing field. Ethereum was just around 5 years ago. Give us some time, and we'll get there. I think that's my answer.
That was a really good answer. I'll see. The next question is also interesting. I mean, it's what is your take on energy consumption and energy efficiency of blockchains? Especially with decentralized finance.
Okay, I can answer that from the NFT perspective because probably NFT also gets questioned all the time about the same thing. And then Vukan can take on the DeFi side of it. So the same questions are usually about NFTs and the energy consumption on NFT side. But then usually there is a trade-off with any form of technology, right? I think Blender Guru even made Blender Guru is the famous YouTuber for the Blender side of things, and he even made a video like myth busting the entire thing. It's not actually a myth. There is a lot of energy consumption with decentralized applications in general. But when you look at applications such as 3D rendering, there is a lot of power consumption involved there as well. So obviously there are trade-offs with the technology, the way blockchain is working, but a lot of chains are actually working on zero or even negative carbon footprint. Because I have personally heard of Cello. Cello is working towards zero carbon footprint, or is already there. I'm not sure, but the technology is evolving and the carbon footprint is getting smaller and smaller, at least on the NFT and general side. Vukkant, you can take the DeFi side.
Yeah, so I think rather than a DeFi side, let's take it as a layer one approach, right? So layer ones are basically the core blockchains that we are talking about, right? So Bitcoin is a layer one, Ethereum is a layer one, and so on. So the thing is that Bitcoin, when it was I mean, even now, and when it was introduced, it follows this thing called proof of work. Now, the thing with proof of work architecture is that to provide security to the Bitcoin blockchain, some amount of computational work needs to be done, right? And the main limitation for that computational work is electrical energy. So, in some way, the security of the protocol and the electrical consumption is correlated. So the more the electrical consumption, the more secure the protocol is in a sort of indirect way. But I think like that association can be made. Now, what is happening is that with Ethereum, and so Ethereum initially was proof of work, but now Ethereum is introducing the new Ethereum, which is Ethereum 2.0, which will be proof of stake. And all the modern layer ones that we have seen, like Elrond, for example, that we just discussed, and any other like Solana, and all of these are proof of stake based blockchains. So they don't require computational work. In proof of stake blockchains, you basically put up a certain amount of stake, and then you use that to sort of, and then that dictates whether or not you've provided accurate information to the protocol in some way. So, and if you misbehave, your stake basically gets slashed, so your money gets cut in some way. So with those things are very efficient. Like, I mean, I think there's a diagram of sorts that we have seen, and that is that if Bitcoin consumption was put into so Bitcoin consumption is the equivalent of like the Burj Khalifa, and the proof of stake electronic consumption for the same level of decentralization is equal to a pin. So if you're looking at the height difference in terms of that, so it's a drastic difference, and I think there will be a point where this will be a lot more efficient than the current financial system as well. So, and I think that is what all of us would like to see. So the overall argument about electronic consumption I don't like, because the field is growing. So again, Bitcoin has that problem, but all the modern blockchains don't.
That's a good answer. We'll move to the next question. I think you have answered it, but I'll still ask it. I mean, what are the languages and framework one should start with, when they are starting with blockchain development?
Okay, so when starting, okay, Vokkant, you want to take that? You can take that.
No, go ahead. No problem.
Okay, so when starting with blockchain, and we are talking about Ethereum in particular here, and not the generalized blockchain, because there are many languages you can choose from for the general stuff. And obviously, you're free to look up for those. But for Ethereum, you start with Solidity. And I would personally suggest learn a JavaScript framework for the front end, possibly even React, because a lot of tutorials are in React. So that's an easy way to go through the resources. And Solidity has a lot of resources. There is Ethereum Stack Exchange for Solidity, r/ETHDev on Reddit for Solidity. So all these things, all these resources are readily available for Solidity as well as React. So choose web3.js and Solidity for your base tech stack, and then you can extend it from there.
Okay, Vokkant, do you want to say anything on this question?
No, that covers it pretty well.
Yeah, this is a very interesting question. It's not really a beginner's question, but that's good. One common criticism of decentralized finance is that though it provides decentralization in a regulation-free environment, decentralized finance is becoming more and more polarized by big promoters who have too much power.
Yeah, that is actually very true, and I think that is something that the whole blockchain as in general is sort of struggling with, I would say, right now, because I mean, even with Elon Musk and Doge, and there are more common examples around all of us regarding that. But I think the general outlook, and especially I think as developers, we try to not focus on that aspect of it, because the promise of the technology is there. And because it's in its early stages, I think that's the thing, right? The whole community keeps memeing about, you keep on building and that's all you focus on. So I think that as a general idea is good. And, you can because the people who are invested in cryptocurrencies and, because the coins that you are dealing with are generally have a very small market cap, right? So all the coins that get manipulated have if there's a coin which has a 30 million market cap, it would be easy to manipulate it. So that is the issue with it, right? Because not a lot of people are investing in it. And generally in the traditional world, what happens is that equity for a company is not available until that company IPOs, right? And when that company IPOs, it's of a decent size. So that is not true for blockchain. Blockchain, coins get listed at very low valuations as well. So that is why their price is a lot more easy to manipulate. But I think that's the thing, right? Once that education comes in, once you actually have people who understand what they are investing in, I think that problem will go away. But as a
Yeah.
problem, it definitely exists right now. Like, completely agree there. Yeah.
Yeah, as a follow-up, I wanted to ask that. I mean, is it possible to have a decentralized regulation or something of sort of this, to have uh, to prevent situations like where coins and and blockchains they are controlled by big promoters, too much stake. Is there anything that we can? I mean, is there any solution or something?
So there are entire communities that exist. So basically, blockchain also brings with it the idea of DAOs, right? So DAO is short for decentralized autonomous organizations, and a lot of people, like a lot of projects, what they choose to do is that they have a DAO that controls like basic aspects of the protocol itself. So again, I don't know if a DAO could impact a particular like celebrity, or like what a celebrity says. I think that part of it is tough, but generally a DAO can make decisions for the protocol itself. So if if there is a day when like the token prices aren't doing too well, so then the DAO will sort of step in. They will try to take the protocol in the right direction. They will try to spread awareness in the community about what's going on. So those are things that can happen. I don't know specifically if like how much an influencer would have an impact and how much a DAO could sort of reprimand that, but there is some sort of a balance that could potentially exist.
Wait, just to add into that, like recently I got to know about a few coins and stuff, and what they were doing against this exact thing is because a lot of the value, not a lot, just the entire thing, the valuation of these coins and stuff come with the liquidity, right? So that can really fluctuate when there is a lot of buying and selling of these tokens. So these people in the community called the whales of any particular token just own a huge amount of token that when they dump can entirely crash the market for that token. So prevention against that has been a lot of contracts lately have made it such that there can be a limited sale for a particular token in a limited amount of time. So it's not going to just crash. No one can just dump their tokens entirely and just get out of it. So that can be one of the solutions, but obviously there are a lot of solutions in work, at least on the smart contract side of these tokens.
Okay, so you're talking about sort of in stabilizing authority, kind of like what we have in traditional IPOs. What this role is played by investment bankers. They stabilize the stock. Is this what you're talking?
Okay. So what Vokkant talked about was DAOs. So DAOs basically allow governance to the person holding the token, right? So say you're a token holder, you now have the voting power over the contract or the protocol, right? So there are two entirely different concepts. One is you're able to vote on the direction that your contract or your protocol is taking. You're part of a protocol and you want it to not move in direction A, you want it to move in direction B. You are given the choice, you vote on direction B. The entirety of it does the same, and you can take the 2/3 or 50% or 51% majority, whatever, to go in that direction. Next is having protection on the smart contract side to be able to prevent huge dumps, right? So, not a stabilizing authority, a piece of code in your contract that literally stops people from selling over a given amount at a single time. So, say you, someone who has 500,000 coins, if they were to dump it all at once, there would be a huge crash in your token, given obviously the total amount of supply and stuff. But there is bound to be a crash. Now, what you can do is you can limit them to sell 50 at a time. Now, obviously, this is restrictive, but this has its benefit. It slows down the crash at the very least. And if the person decides to keep dumping it, it gives others time to sell their tokens or get out of it, whatever, at the same time. So it slows down the fall with this little piece of code, if that makes sense. So
Yeah,
there
I
are two
got you.
entirely different approaches. Yeah.
Yeah, I get you. I mean, this is a really interesting solution. And this way we can have an impartial regulation. I mean, that's a criticism of centralized regulation that they are sort of partial. That's a really good system.
Yeah, actually, the entire difference is the centralized. Okay, so the problem with blockchain right now is it's not legally binding, right? So if someone decides to do the rug pull or someone decides to do just dump their coins and do some kind of fraud on chain, it's not exactly legally binding. There is no legal restriction around it. It's just an electrical coin, or like electronic digital money. Government is not going to interfere and arrest that person. That is the huge issue around it. So the entire security stems from that piece of code instead from legal restrictions. That is the main argument and difference between centralized regulation and decentralized regulation right now.
Yeah, okay, that's interesting, I guess. I mean, that's it we have with questions. Would you like to have some closing remarks? I mean, both of you, if you can give us some closing remarks, that would be really good.
Okay, so personally, I would say you have to get in the space. This is the right time to get into the space. There are huge stuff, huge things happening in the space right now. And before each 2.0 comes in, there is going to be even bigger advances. When the ETH 2.0 comes in, there are going to be even bigger advances in the community as well as technology. So now is the right time for time and opportunity to get into the space, to be able to make a career, to be able to financially make yourself financially independent, and just learn a new cool piece of tech. That is all I would say, Vokkant.
Yeah, I think same only. Like it's a great place to work in general. It's a lot of fun. I think you'll work on. So that's the thing, right? I mean, I was working at Microsoft like a month ago, right? And it was horrible. And I was working on like a very small code base. I mean, on a huge code base, but on a very small part of that huge code base. And I think my contribution was very limited, and it could easily be replaced by anybody. What I like about blockchain is that the smart contracts that you sort of create will be used to, protect millions and millions of dollars in cryptocurrency. So if you align with the right project, if you contribute to the right project, I think you can see a very like obvious impact of the work that you do. So it's rewarding in that sense. It obviously, it's very lucrative. I think I've said this way too many times already. It pays really, really well. So I think, and generally people are a lot more fun in the blockchain space. I think you get to meet great people, you get to interact with really smart people. So overall, I think it's just a good place to be at, and you'll really grow as an individual, and you'll learn a lot too. So yeah, I think that's about it.
Thank you, guys. Thank you very much. It was a really insightful session. I mean, on my personal experience, I got to learn a lot. Devesh, you can close the stream. Oh, yeah, the stream is closed. I mean, yeah, you guys can, if you are free to go. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks for inviting us. Thanks a lot. Bye bye.
Pleasure is ours.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye, guys. Thank you.